Welcome back, friends. Today we're going to be talking about some 2025 reading goals that I have. I have a list of 10 goals in my trusty journal. I think I might even make one of those bingo bullet journal spreads for this because I think they would be fun to check off throughout the year. And they do seem quite manageable and quite fun. That's honestly the biggest goal is just have fun with it. So let's get started. Number 1 is annotate 5 books. I originally wrote 10 books, but I think 5 is better because I don't want to buy a lot of books next year, kind of how this year I did really great with not buying many books at all. I sold a lot of books and I want to keep that up. I don't want to buy every single book that I'm reading, but I do think that when I read classics, it's very beneficial for me to annotate them. It keeps me motivated to keep reading it because it helps me feel like I'm making progress. I tried to read several classics this year in library copies and kept getting stuck in the middle of it, and then I would return them and never pick it up again. But recently I bought a few classics that I was originally reading from library copies, and I've been reading them out of my own copies and annotating them now, and I'm reading them so much more consistently since I'm able to write in them and highlight things that I really like and circle things, write my thoughts down. It just elevates the reading experience. I find it very fun, and it helps me feel like I'm moving forward, because when I had those library copies, not being able to see a piece of me in the text, like my own handwriting, I would just feel like I had been reading the same page over and over, and sometimes I was doing that. If you're not used to reading classic literature very frequently, you can sometimes just find yourself reading the same thing and never really moving forward. So I think the annotation process is really helpful for me to keep my momentum going. And even for books that aren't classics, it's still really fun. I started annotating Binding 13 last week, and that's been such a blast. I guess I forgot how much I really enjoyed annotating this year since I have been reading so many library books, and obviously I can't write in those. So now, since I've bought several books this month after not buying books for a very long time, I'm just rediscovering how fun it is to write in your books. So I want to keep that up next year. I don't want to buy a lot of books, but I already have probably 10 books that are unread on my shelf. So I could annotate those, or maybe I'll buy a handful of other books next year. Still want to keep the buying low, like I said. Probably bought under 15 books this year, which honestly is good. This whole year, I haven't been buying books. And then starting at the end of November until now, mid-December, I bought all 15 of those books in that 3-week span. So I think next year I'll just let myself buy maybe a book a month. That might be nice. So that last goal goes really well with goal number 2 that I have, which is to read one classic novel every month. How many classics did I read this year? I read We've Always Lived in the Castle, How Much Land Does a Man Need, which is a short story by Tolstoy, Carmilla, The Haunting of Hill House, and Persuasion. I would call the Shirley Jackson novels modern classics, but the other 3 are 1800s old books. And I want to read more classics next year. 2025 is going to be my year of classics. I can feel it. I just know it. I'm so excited. I read my first Jane Austen novel this year, and I've always been really afraid of Jane Austen books. I've tried to read Pride and Prejudice so many times, and I was never able to get into it. The language was just so overwhelmingly difficult for me, but this year I powered through it and was able to finish Persuasion and actually really enjoyed it. After I got over the 100-page mark, I started to love it. So that, and then also reading Carmilla because it was really short and really entertaining. Those 2 books really changed my perspective on what it means to read a classic and have fun while doing it, because before then, and before obviously the Shirley Jacksons, because since those are more modern, they didn't really feel like reading classic lit. But the last classic I had read was The Picture of Dorian Gray, and everybody loves that novel, and I was really sad when I was one of the people who didn't like it. I just had such a difficult time reading it. I did really enjoy a lot of it, a lot of the themes really. It's hard to remember it. I read it 3 years ago now. I just remember the middle section of the book, the middle 100 pages. I was having just a rough time. I'd love to return to it and do a reread now that I know the story. I think oftentimes classic lit gets better as you read it more times, so I'd love to give it another chance, and I definitely will at some point. Carmilla and Persuasion have given me a newfound spark and hope, and I'm excited to read more classics. I'm also reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles right now, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, which I hated the first couple times that I tried to read it. And I'm also reading Walden by Henry David Thoreau, which I'm really enjoying as well, and that one's not super difficult to read. I think just the more classics that I read, the more the fear dissipates and it becomes easier to pick up another classic novel every single time you do it, the more that you do it. So I want to read more classics, hopefully one every month. That would be awesome. I'd be really proud of myself if I can achieve that goal. And considering that I read 5 this year and that was with me going to school, and next year I'm not going to have school anymore, I think that it's definitely very doable. Goal number 3 is to read 50 books next year. This one I feel confident about because this year I think my reading is going to end up being somewhere between 40 and 42 books, because right now I'm at 37 and I'm in the middle of several books that I know that I'll finish at least 3 of them before the month is over. Going up to 50 for next year is definitely doable, especially with having this channel now. It just brings me more excitement to read more books so I can talk about them here. I think 50 books is something I can totally do. There's 52 weeks in a year, so I'd like to average a book a week. And the thing about it is I probably am reading 50 books worth of pages every year, but I'm just such a sporadic reader, so I'll read a little bit of one book and a little bit of another book, and I'm just bouncing around between so many books that I never end up finishing half of them. So I want to get better with that next year. I also want to DNF less books. So in one of my previous videos, I had mentioned DNFing books, and I spoke to my family about it, and they did explain why they don't like to DNF books, and I've done some thinking about it, and I would like to DNF a little bit less next year. I definitely want to keep DNFing things that I just genuinely don't like or I feel aren't worth reading for me. If I know I'm not going to have a good time, then I'm not going to force myself to read it just so that I can read more books. But if there's something that I am enjoying and there's some reason that I'm not picking up that's not super valid to me, as in just at the moment there's a little bit of a boring section and I'd rather just read something else that's more entertaining, or I just don't feel like going to a different room to pick up that book, so then I read something else on my phone. Reasons like that, I'm gonna try and cut down on, and I really want to finish more books next year because I was looking through some of my unfinished books, soft DNFs from this year, and there are so many of them. If you just put all of those pages together, that would probably equal another 15 books that I would have read this year if we combined the total sum of pages in those books. Instead, an average book is 300 pages, I would have read so many more. So next year, we're going to finish more books so that we can get to 50. Next, I would like to read 1 library book every month. I think this one I probably already did this year, if we're including audio and ebooks, which I don't know if I want to do that yet or not. I want to read more physical books next year because I do think my majority of reading was done in audiobooks, which is fine. I like listening to audiobooks. I think it's great. But there is a different experience that comes with just reading something with your eyeballs. It's just 2 different vibes. And there are some books that I listen to the audio, and as soon as I'm finished with it, I know I need to do a reread physically because there are things that I missed or things that I want to be able to annotate or just look at. Something about looking at beautiful words on paper, you can't compare it. There's nothing like it. So I want to read more books physically, but to make that some sort of concrete goal, I'm going to say 1 library book a month, specifically from the library, because I want to make sure I'm still utilizing my public library. And something about reading a library book and knowing the book has changed hands multiple times and a bunch of people before you have enjoyed it is a really nice feeling to me. I just like knowing that I'm not the first person who has opened up this book, and there are others who went on the same journey that I'm about to go through, and with this specific edition of the book, that just feels really cool. So I want to keep doing it. Goal number 5 is to make more bookish tributes. I don't really know how else to phrase it, but basically there are so many books that by the end of it, I get absolutely obsessed, and I don't have an outlet to express that sometimes. Or I do have an outlet. I have many outlets, but I don't always utilize them. My outlet ends up being something like ranting to a close friend or family member who probably hasn't even read the book, so can't fully appreciate the rant that I'm giving. Now an outlet has become making these videos or just scrolling on TikTok looking for other people who really love the book. But sometimes I do use my other outlets, which are these tributes, I'm calling them. And I want to keep doing that because there's something about making something, the act of creation, that brings some of the satisfaction that I'm looking for after I have this dark hole in my heart when I read something beautiful and it's over. Making something that kind of honors that book seems to fill that gap a little bit. So some examples of how I can make these tributes are making bullet journal spreads about the book, Spotify playlists, make a dedicated YouTube video about it, a Pinterest board. I've never made a Pinterest board about a book before, and I'm interested to start because I dabble in Pinterest. I use it so that I can get inspiration when I'm writing my own books, but I've never done it to sum up how I felt going through a book. I did kind of do it for ACOTAR when I made a tribute for that book in my reading journal, so something like like that, or a Notion board. I want to start a Notion for next year, but that's not really a reading goal, but that is a goal that I have. Like, I want to make a Notion now and just use it throughout 2025. I saw Bella from Throne of Pages. She showed her Notion like years ago. Like, it was an old video, but I watched her Notion tour and it was so good. It was so cool. She just had everything that she's obsessed with in it, like K-dramas, anime, books, movies, music, everything. You can put anything in that. It's literally like a digital playground notebook. And I feel like I need that in my life. I am a fangirl at heart. I get so obsessed with books, movies, literally anything fictional. I'm just an obsessor. There's this Donna Tartt quote that goes, "I am nothing in my soul if not obsessive." And that is me. That's me to my core. And I need to make things to help fill that void when the obsession strikes. Because I know it always makes me feel better. Because I get obsessed with these books and then I'm just like, what do I do with myself now? Like, I don't know what to do. And nothing feels like it can quell the itch. And it used to be in the past that I would buy the book to try and like fix that, and that's how I ended up with so many books. Like, even if I would listen to something or read the ebook, when I would finish with it and I felt the hole in my heart, I would just go and buy a physical copy and I would try to do that to fix the feeling, and it never works, you know? So I think creating things is the closest thing I found to like fixing it. The best thing possible would probably just be doing a whole entire reread or writing your own. Like, I find that writing, taking elements from things that you love also really helps with that. Basically, long story short, I just want to make more things that honor some of my loves, some of the things that make me feel like life is worth living. Goal number 6 is to read one book that is over 1,000 pages next year. This one is scary. I don't think I've ever read a book that's over 1,000 pages. I think the longest book I'd ever read, it's probably either Crescent City, which is I think somewhere between like 700 and 800 pages, or it's Iron Flame. Yeah, I think it's probably one of those. And they were fun. Neither of them are my favorite books ever, but I just want to not have big book fear anymore. And kind of like how classics, I think I need exposure therapy to quell that fear. I think the same thing applies for big books. So it's probably going to be a Brandon Sanderson novel. I think I'm going to read The Way of Kings next year because I have it. I bought it this month because it was on sale for the first time ever that I've seen. I never see that book on sale. So I got it this year and I'd like to read it next year. And the Stormlight Archive has just been completed. It's a 5-book series, and I believe all of the books are over 1,000 pages. And the last book just came out last week, so it's now a completed series. If I want to get really into it, I can. I have the ability to do so without having to wait between books. So very excited about that. Speaking of series and waiting between books, my next goal is to finish a series / catch up on any series. I'm in the middle of a million series, like every reader always is. I really love reading series. It's just nice to be able to be with characters for a very long time, which is why I have that last goal of reading a really long book over 1,000 pages, because just having more page time with the same people, it just creates a special experience. So really just any series that I'm in the middle of, or any series that I'm going to start next year, I don't care. I don't think I finished any series this year. Oh no, that's not true. I finished the Harry Potter series. That was a reread though, so yeah, that's the only one. But I did start several series this year. Some of them I don't want to continue, but some of them I do. The main ones that come to mind right now are the Red Rising series. I'd like to finish or catch up on that. I'd like to finish the Off Campus series by Elle Kennedy. I am on the 4th book out of 5. And then she has like a spin-off series called Briar U that I know I'm going to read at some point as well. So yeah, not specifying which series it is. It doesn't really matter to me. I just want to complete one of them, because I know that's a big goal in itself, depending on which series it is that I choose, because some of these series that I'm in the middle of, it's like a bunch of books totaling to thousands of pages, so just one would make me happy. My next goal, totally unrelated, is to read 3 nonfiction books. Oh, wait a second. Maybe we should change that. I thought I only read 2 this year, but I think I read more. I read The Anthropocene Reviewed, The Year of Less, Goodbye Things, Counting the Cost, and The Colossus of New York, which I don't know if that counts as nonfiction or not. We won't count it. They're vignettes, and I don't know if vignettes are fiction or nonfiction. So we just won't count it to be safe. So that means that I read 4 nonfiction books this year. So let's change that to 5. Do a little bit more than I did this year. All of the nonfiction books that I read this year, I really enjoyed. One of them was a memoir. One of them was a collection of essays. And then the other 2 were about minimalism, because I love reading books and just consuming content about minimalism. It's very cool to me. I do want to strive to read some more like educational nonfiction books. The ones that I read this year, I loved. So I want to keep reading books like those, like memoirs and just things about topics that I like. But maybe like branching out to things that I don't know so much about. Like I've had my eye on Neil deGrasse Tyson's book. I think it's called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. I've been curious about that one for quite some time. And I have this one book on my shelf called Cod. It's like a history of fishing, but it's told in a very story-like way, I've heard from an old man who works at a local used bookstore that I go to. He said he really loved that book. So just broadening my nonfiction horizons, and I do believe that that's something I can totally do. Continuing with the idea of broadening my reading horizons and just like the genres that I read from, I'd like to read, oh gosh, I don't know what, I'm not sure if I want to do winners of these prizes or just things on the short list or the long list. So basically I want to read either something that has won, was shortlisted or longlisted for the Booker Prize, Pulitzer Prize, and the Women's Fiction Prize. I'm always aware of the winners of these prizes and like sometimes of people who are on the short list and the long list, but I never pick them up. Like I've read a few Pulitzer Prize winning books, can't tell you which ones, like To Kill a Mockingbird won a Pulitzer, and I can't really think of anything else that I've read that did that. I mean, I've read Pulitzer Prize winning authors, like Donna Tartt wrote The Secret History, which I read, but she won her Pulitzer for The Goldfinch, I believe. So I haven't read The Goldfinch yet. But basically, I'm always very interested in hearing which books win every year, but I never pick them up and I never actually go about reading them. So I want to do that next year. Part of how this goal was born is because right now I'm reading Orbital by Samantha Harvey, which won the Booker Prize this year. And it is just fantastic. Like I'm loving it so much. If you like Interstellar, then you might like this. It's not a plot driven book at all. So if you like Interstellar because of the plot and like all the action, never mind. But if you like it for the aesthetic of being in space and having like an introspective story, this book is just fantastic in that regard. It's very quiet. It's more about the emotional impact of what it's like being away from your home planet, but still close enough to see it. Because we're following this group of astronauts who are orbiting the Earth. They go around the Earth 16 times a day. They're just conducting experiments in their spaceship. But as they orbit the planet, like they're seeing all of these like landmarks. Like you can see the pyramids from space. You can see like we're passing over Africa right now. We're passing over the Mediterranean Sea, and all of the feelings that comes with like being so close that you can see these things, but still so far away. The writing is beautiful. The themes of just being a tiny individual in comparison to the vastness and the largeness of space. It's just such an interesting emotional topic to discuss in a scientific setting. And I totally understand why it won the Booker this year. I shouldn't even say that because honestly, I don't even know enough about the Booker, the Pulitzer, and the Women's Prize. Like, I don't know very much about how those three are selected in comparison to one another. Like, what's the difference between winning a Booker and winning a Pulitzer? So that's also goals too. Like, I want to be more educated about what these awards mean and what it means to be shortlisted and longlisted, and just be more updated and reading more books that are being literarily recognized that year and like coming out that year. I feel like I'm super up to date in like the book talk girly romance books new releases area of the internet, but I'm not up to date with the literary fiction side, even though I am like just as interested in both of those topics. So yeah, I think the goal is going to be read one from each prize, whether that be a winner, a shortlist, or a long list work on any of them. And then the opposite idea, that last goal is so that I can be introduced to new works. And my final goal is to return to an author that I love. I have this weird personality quirk, I suppose, where I'll read a book by somebody and I will love it and be super into it and then never read a book by that person again. And I do the same thing with music sometimes. Like I'll find a song by a band that I really, really like and then never listen to another song by that band, even though they could have tons of music that I would really enjoy. I don't know why I do it. Maybe it's like some subconscious fear of their other work not living up to how much I enjoyed the previous works, but I want to get over that, and I just want to pick up more books from authors that I've already read that I really love, and I've only read one thing by them. Like there's so many. Like I've only read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, like I mentioned, and I'm obsessed with that book. It's probably my favorite book of all time, and I haven't read The Goldfinch or The Little Friend. I did read her one short story that's like about high school cheerleader, if you know that one. I can't remember the name of it. And then there's Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote Daisy Jones and the Six, which I really loved. That's one of the only books that's ever made me cry. I'm not a book crier at all, and it's very rare that that happens. So the fact that it did make me cry it was a good book. And people really love a lot of her other books. Like, they're very popular. Like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Carrie Soto is Back, Malibu Rising. I've heard such good things about so many of her books, and I just never have picked up any more. I don't know why. So yeah, I want to return to some of those authors that I know I already really like the way that they write and just read some more of their work. And with that, we are at the end of the video. These are all the goals that I have as of right now. I will probably come up with some more and maybe post like something on my reading journal about it, because I think I will do one of those bingo spreads, and that'll just be in my like 2025 reading journal setup, which should be posted sometime before the end of the year. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments if you have any reading goals for next year, be it big or small, a lot or little. I would love to know.